The flight from Minneapolis had already departed, but Reed Langston remained engrossed in his papers. In seat 2A of business class, he found the silence he preferred, until a soft, deliberate woman's voice singing something not in English broke through. He didn't understand the lyrics, but the cadence and tension in her voice made him pause. Reed glanced towards the coach and noticed someone was singing in Spanish, not performing, but comforting. The voice lingered, familiar yet impossible to place. 2 rows behind the divider, Camille Doyle, 25, leaned over seat 18FA, cradling her sleeping son and humming a lullaby only her mother knew. An older woman with an Italian accent in the row ahead was touched by the lullaby, reminiscent of her childhood in Naples. Camille offered a nod and continued humming softly. Later, a flight attendant mispronounced farfall, and Camille gently corrected her. The man in 2AA, Reed, looked back longer this time and pressed the call button. He asked to move to row 18. Reed closed his laptop, took his coat, and walked to the coach. He sat next to Camille without a word. When she whispered in French, Reed turned his head, listening intently. The cabin lights dimmed over Michigan. Camille noticed Reed glancing at her, unsure of what to make of a woman calming a child in Turkish and correcting the flight attendant's Spanish. Reed offered her a printed research packet, a translation for a clinical trial in Istanbul, seeking her opinion. Camille quickly identified an incorrect word, ilots, which should have been tadi, clarifying the context of treatment versus medication. Reed was surprised, as that word wasn't flagged. Camille explained that she studied language and had picked up 7, including Turkish, due to life's necessities. She mentioned dropping out of linguistics at the University of Minnesota because of her son, Noah's, early arrival. The flight captain announced their descent. Camille returned the document. Reed mentioned a meeting the next day with international biotech partners, needing someone who understands nuanced language. He offered Camille a seat at the table, no obligation. Camille didn't answer. The cold morning air in Boston stung Camille as she walked near Copley Square. Her phone alerted her to Noah's cancelled speech therapy session. She headed towards the Fairmont building. The receptionist found her name on the list for Mr. Langston's meeting on the 17th floor. Camille noticed her reflection in the elevator. No makeup, wrinkled coat, coffee stain. The conference room was silent as Camille entered. Reed gestured to the chair beside him. She sat. A document with German, English, and French columns was slid towards her. She marked essay in a French sentence, writing étude beside it. Reed asked why, and she explained that étude has a more clinical weight. A man with an Eastern European accent challenged a proposed partnership in Hungary. Camille cited a clause in the updated Hungarian Act allowing foreign audit panels. Reed then moved on. Camille exhaled. Reed pushed a water bottle to her. Camille waited until everyone left. Reed stood across the room, scrolling through his phone. Camille grabbed her coat. Reed spoke. She paused. Reed stepped closer. Zurich was set for next Thursday. It's a negotiation with a Swiss regulatory board. Half the conflict is linguistic. The other half is pride. He handed her a card. No title, no contact info, just a hotel name and a time. This isn't a job offer, is it? It's not charity either. Then he added, almost as an afterthought, bring your son. We'll arrange care on site. Camille blinked. That wasn't in the script. I didn't mention him today. You didn't have to. He turned and walked out. No farewell, just trust given in silence. That night, Camille lay beside Noah in the small twin bed of their temporary apartment. She stared at the ceiling and whispered a line from a Turkish proverb her grandmother used to say, "A single thread of silk holds more weight than a chain if tied at the right time." She looked at the card on the nightstand. Next Thursday, Zurich. She didn't know how to dress for it. She didn't know what would be asked, but she knew what it meant when someone powerful didn't ask you to prove yourself again. Zurich smelled like something old trying to become new again. Steel rails, polished sidewalks, cold glass buildings, pressing against the memory of cobblestones. Camille kept her coat closed at the collar. Noah was safe in the childcare suite at the hotel. She entered the Langston satellite office on Bonhoefstrasse. There were 12 people in the room, and not a single one looked up. Reed wasn't there yet. The head of European strategy, Daniel Koig, flicked his pen once before speaking. "We were told someone from legal would join," he said, glancing at Camille's empty hands. "But I assume your operations." Camille didn't answer. She chose a seat by the wall. The meeting began. Slides, charts, regulatory language, and 4 languages. Camille listened quietly until they reached a clause about biomarker clearance under Swiss EU transitional law. A soft frown curved her lips. "That's outdated," she said. That phrasing was replaced in March under the bilateral agreements. Koenig turned. "And you are?" She looked up calmly. "I'm Camille Doyle." He waited. "And your role?" Before she could respond, the door opened. Reed walked in. No briefcase, just a small notepad and a look that said he'd heard everything from the hallway. "She's the reason we didn't lose Ankura," he said flatly. "If you're still waiting for titles, you've already missed the point." He sat beside her, leaned slightly over, and whispered, not in English, but in German, "Are you all right?" She nodded once, also in German. "Yes, but they still don't understand what I'm doing here." Reed leaned back. "That's fine," he said in English, addressing the room now. "They'll understand it by the end." Later that evening, Camille stood at the window of her room, watching the trams move like quiet thoughts below. She heard the door open softly. "Noah's asleep," Reed said from behind. She turned. "You didn't have to check." "I always check." He handed her a folder blank on the outside. Inside, no contracts, just one sentence. "I want you to be the voice that reviews every word before the world sees it." Camille closed the folder. Her voice was quiet. "Why me?" Reed didn't hesitate. "Because you know when a word looks correct, but sounds wrong." She laughed under her breath. "That's not a qualification." He looked her in the eye. "It's the only one I trust." Camille closed the door to her Zurich suite. The snow outside blurred the rooftops like water over ink. Noah was asleep in the corner, curled up with a new book from the hotel gift shop, Animals of the Alps in 3 languages. His breathing was steady, safe. She sat down at the desk and opened her laptop. There it was, an internal message, not from Reed, not from HR, no greeting, no sign-off, just a subject line. Langston Zurich Protocols, Review Authority Clarification, and a single line of text. Her presence was not formally approved. Please clarify the scope of access moving forward. Camille stared at it. The horror wasn't bolded, but it may as well have been. She didn't reply. Not yet. The next morning, Camille walked into the Zurich office without a badge. She didn't need one. Reed had written the system override himself. She waited until noon, then knocked on the glass wall of the executive corner office. Daniel Koig looked up. "Miss Doyle," he said, neutral. "You don't usually check in." "I don't," she replied. "But you sent a message." He blinked. "I don't believe I." It wasn't signed, Camille said, but it carried your phrasing. Formally approved. Scope of access. Those are your words. Koig stood slowly. We are a regulatory division. We follow the process. Camille didn't raise her voice. So do I. That's why Ankura didn't collapse. That's why the Zurich documentation wasn't thrown out last week, because I flagged the clause your legal team missed. He said nothing. She took a breath. I'm not asking for a title or for you to like how I got here. But if you undermine my role again without addressing me directly, I will make sure that correction is your last edit on file. It wasn't a threat. It was a translation. Power spoken in a language he finally understood. Koenig sat back down. Understood. Camille turned to leave, then paused. One more thing, she said. Quieter now. I was never formally invited into that first meeting either. Reed just left the door open. That night, she found an envelope slid under her hotel door. Inside, no note, just a single-page Langston policy draft written in 5 languages. At the bottom in black ink, your review matters more than their approval. Camille folded the paper slowly. For the first time, she let herself smile, not because she'd won, but because she hadn't lost who she was trying not to be. Someone who waited to be welcomed. Now she walked through the door. 2 weeks later, Reed emailed, "Need you in Geneva." It's not business. Noah had just painted his nails with a highlighter and fallen asleep on the couch. Camille replied, "Is it personal?" Reed answered, "Only if you want it to be." The train from Zurich to Geneva cut through fog-draped hills, glass windows catching the last orange breath of winter sun. Camille sat by the window, Noah asleep on her lap, his little fingers still sticky from a pear tart they'd shared at the station. Across from her, Reed didn't speak. He didn't need to. Camille had accepted his invitation without asking what it meant, and he had sent the ticket without saying what waited. Maybe that was the closest either of them could come to honesty right now. The hotel in Geneva wasn't one of Reed's usual 5-star towers. It was quiet, old with creaky stairs and brass doorknobs that still carried warmth from the last hand that turned them. Their rooms were across the hall, not next to each other. Camille opened hers to find something unexpected. A folded wool blanket on the bed, and beside it, a note written not in Reed's sharp black ink, but in violet. Take tomorrow off. No meetings. I'll be across the street at the cafe with the red chairs. Bring Noah or don't. Just come if you feel like it. She didn't sleep immediately that night. She sat by the window, watching snow begin to fall. Soft, unbothered, like it had no need to impress. Noah stirred in his sleep. Camille tucked the blanket over him, then whispered what she used to whisper when things felt too good to last. Don't make it mean too much. Don't name it yet. But part of her already had mornings. The cafe had red chairs just like he said. Reed was already there. No laptop, no notes. A plate of toast and a small glass jar of apricot jam sat untouched in front of him. Camille sat down. Noah climbed into the chair beside him like he'd done it 100 times. They didn't talk about business. They talked about how languages changed the shape of a story. About how in German, the word for missing someone carries the sense of something no longer there but once belonged to you. They talked about New York and silence and mothers who raised children without ever being asked how they felt. Reed asked, "What would you do if everything stopped right now?" Camille said, "I'd still speak." It was afternoon when they wandered into a small bookstore. Noah found a picture book in Korean. Camille read aloud the first line, and Reed watched her lips move, not knowing the words, but feeling every syllable land like soft weight on paper. At the back of the store was a wall covered in postcards, each with a quote. Noah picked one, gave it to Reed. It said, "Some people arrive and make such a beautiful impact. You can barely remember what life was like without them." Reed looked at Camille. She didn't look away. That night, Camille knocked on his door. He opened it, not surprised, not expectant. She didn't step inside, just stood there. "I don't need another contract," she said. "And I don't need promises." He nodded almost too quickly. "I know, but if I'm going to build something new, Reed, I don't want to build it alone." Silence. Then he said, "You don't have to." Later, when the city lights softened and Noah was asleep once more, Camille sat on the balcony, knees drawn up to her chest, blanket around her shoulders. Reed joined her. No words, just shared breath in the quiet cold. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel like someone who had escaped something. She felt like someone who had arrived. Thank you for watching till the very end. Stories like Camille and Reed's remind us that sometimes a single voice can change everything. If this touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with us. More true to life, inspiring stories are coming your way every